very much in favour of the right to protest being protected very, very forcefully. However, the right to protest doesn't necessarily mean the right to disrupt other people for days or weeks on end. We've seen this from Extinction Rebellion before. It's only when they come up against ordinary people without the police present when they realise how unpopular they are. I'm speaking, of course, about the Battle of Canning Town a few years back when the good folk of East London decided they weren't going to put up with idiot eco-activists lying on top of their trains when they were trying to get to work at 7 in the morning on a wet morning, and promptly removed them and were cheered on by a grateful nation. What do you make of these protests?
Well, I think, first of all, we should stop using the word protest, because this is really theatre, a performance. This is not really protest in the sense of there being any risk attached to it. As you know, in the past, when people protested, they risked being arrested, they risked going to jail, they even risked being beaten up. But because the establishment loves the Extinction Rebellion so much, they know full well that there are no risks attached. All they got to do is play. All they got to do is make a little bit of theater and music, and the world will be theirs. And I think it's a shame that we insist on calling them protesters, because the idea of protest has got an honorable tradition to it, whereas what these people are doing is trivializing protest and demeaning it and turning it into an empty shell of performance.
Well, it did. I mean, it's certainly a performance, and they're very, very good at it. I mean, these are, of course, I mean, not that middle class people don't have as much of a right to protest as working class people, but it is an extraordinarily middle class and often aristocratic affair. And an awful lot of people who are part of these movements seem to feel very strongly about the eco issues they talk about when they're on those protests. They don't seem to feel so strongly in their private lives, do they? We had a speech yesterday and lots of media interviews with one of the group's co-founders, that's Gail Bradbrook, who apparently quite happily drives a diesel car, drives her kids to and from school in a diesel car, and also happily took a trip to Costa Rica, flew to Costa Rica because she wanted to be with nature. But at the same time as campaigning against people having diesel cars, campaigning against people flying on cheap flights, like, I mean, and again and again, just like we do with Prince Harry and Meghan, or the likes of the actors who pontificate on this stuff, they talk a good game, don't they? But when it comes to living it themselves, they seem to take a rather different view.
Yes, I mean, they have a very clear double standard, which is there's their world, which has their mode of behavior, and then there's the rest of us. And one of the ways in which you can see their profoundly anti-democratic outlook on the world is you watch their language and you listen to their language, and they always use the same word, which is that they are making us aware. They're raising awareness. And when you step back and ask, well, what do they mean by awareness? What does that really mean? You begin to realize that what they are really saying is that I'm aware, I have the truth, I know what you need to do, but you, everybody else, are a lower form of human being who need to think the way we do.
Yeah.
So awareness doesn't mean a conversation, a discussion, and a debate. It basically is a diktat whereby you act in accordance with our outlook or else.
And that is it. We always told these are peaceful protests. If you're blocking a street, stopping people going along a public highway, deliberately stopping them, not the same as a march. Someone is using that street as they are entitled to do, usually with police permission. You're allowed to, on a weekend, nearly always. I've gone on an anti-lockdown protest. We marched along Oxford Street, marched down Regent Street. That protest was allowed for a certain period of time, and people walked along. You're not sitting there blocking it. You're not stopping people going to shops or going about their legal business. That's very different, isn't it? But I don't think of these. I don't think these are peaceful protests in the sense that if someone did want to go about their lawful business, what would happen to them?
Well, exactly, because what they're doing is exercising a form of moral and physical blackmail on the lives of ordinary people. In a sense, what they are really doing is basically saying is either you act in accordance with our demands, or we'll give you a hard time, make it difficult for you to get to work or to get to the football match, or to just simply go out and have a nice time in a restaurant. And I think in that sense, in many ways, this is far more disturbing a kind of a protest when people go out on the street and hurl bricks at a particular kind of object, because at least at that point they're honest. They basically indicating what they're doing.
I'm gonna disagree with you. I don't want people doing either. But I understand your point. But the other thing also is you do wonder, 2-week protest. Don't these people have jobs? I mean, I wonder how many of my listeners could just say, do you know what? I'll take 2 weeks or even a day. I'll just take a day off work to go and protest all day in Oxford Street. Most other people have to actually go out to work for a living. Also, just finally, when we've been talking, we've been showing some of the footage, and one of the big banners they're marching behind, business as usual is killing us, is what that banner says. I mean, that's just a lie. I mean, one of the main issues I have with particularly the media coverage of these things is people are allowed to spout. And I saw an interview with Gail Bradbrook, the co-founder, yesterday. She talked absolute abject nonsense without a single fact at any point, anything that could be backed up by evidence. These ridiculous assertions. Greta Thunberg is the worst offender on this. A very poorly educated child, sort of lecturing the world, saying, people are dying. It is simply untrue. I mean, these are not statements that are backed up by scientific or evidentiary fact.
I know. In many ways, this is the most infantilized, childish protest you can imagine, because they use the language of childhood. They can basically blurb out anything they feel like, because they know full well there's going to be no comeback on it. Nobody's going to take and examine their ideas very, very seriously. So when you look at them, what you're seeing are a bunch of angry children rebelling against their parents or against the world. And they should be treated with the contempt they deserve, because they are fundamentally dishonest and in many ways quite despicable organization that has got no need to worry about anything, because they're not going to pay a price for the disturbance they create.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. A bunch of angry children. They're all just protesting against mummy and daddy in their Range Rover, which they'll quite happily sit in when they have to get a lift to their latest ski holiday. I mean, that's the reality. We see this again and again. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Frank Furedi. Really appreciate you joining us.